It's almost the 4th of July, which gives us time to sit here, pause, and reflect and partake in one of the great American traditions, and that is watching your team suck and calling for the firing of the coach. And this just happens to be more patriotic than usual because it is the United States men's national soccer team, and it is they who need to be firing Gregg Berhalter before the fireworks go off in a couple of days. It has run its course. We are in a danger zone for U.S. soccer of really embarrassing ourselves in what is supposed to be our moment in 2026. The the Yanks crash out of Copa America without even making it out of the group. 1-0 loss to Uruguay after an embarrassing, just out, downright, flat out embarrassing defeat at the hands of Panama, and they become the first host nation in the history of the Copa America tournament to not make it out of the group. What more do you need at this point? Because to be quite honest, I know you look at Gregg Berhalter's, body of work as the USMNT manager, and it's not like terrible. But at what point have we said, finally, this team is really starting to turn it around? 2021? Sure. That was 3 years ago. A solid showing at the 22 World Cup? Yeah, fine. The team's still young. And here we are 2 years later, after they have reinforced that this is their guy. After the World Cup, they said, yes, this is the guy we want to keep rolling with. They apparently had this extensive months-long search and said, you know what? We actually have the guy. We have the guy. You don't have the guy. Because this is one of the great embarrassments in the history of U.S. soccer. This is about as talented a roster as you can get. And they're all hitting or at their prime. And still we have regressed. We have not moved forward. We have moved backward. All under the watchful eye of Gregg. This job is as sexy as it's ever been. This roster is as good as it has ever been. And you are about to walk into as mouth-watering an opportunity as there has ever been for U.S. soccer. A World Cup once again on your home soil. I know we had it before in 94. That is light years behind us. The state of U.S. soccer in 1994 versus what it is 30 years later, light years. We have been circling this 2026 year on the calendar for a decade now. Of this is when the golden generation is going to hit. This is when it's all going to fall into place and you're going to have it on home soil. This is the U.S. moment. There were people saying when the U.S. and North America won this bid that the Americans couldn't be in a chance to finally do the thing and win the World Cup. Was that a little ridiculous? Yes, and of course is now. But there is no reason to believe that the U.S. cannot make a run to the quarterfinals or further than they've ever been, to the semifinals, really further than they've ever been. There's no reason that shouldn't be possible. But with this leadership in place right now, that is impossible. It's not going to happen. And is it as dire as it's ever been? No. But considering the circumstances, it's damn near close. Considering the circumstances of where your golden generation is at, playing a tournament on home soil, and to just flat out embarrass the nation like that with the most important couple of weeks in the history of your federation coming up in 2 years. Yeah, it is that important. It is that dire. And they cannot be led by Gregg Berhalter into this next stage. Gregg Berhalter, who has never beaten a team in the top 20 of the ELO rankings, not named Mexico. In fact, just one in the top 30 for teams not named Mexico. His biggest two wins as the manager of the U.S. men's national team were a 0-0 draw against England in the World Cup and a 1-1 draw against Brazil in a tune-up to this Copa America. Look where that got you. This just can't go on. It can't go on. And the U.S. needs to put their balls on the freaking table for once and go out there and try to get an actual name, because there is still this ripple effect of the Jurgen Klinsmann days that we can't go out and get someone who's been a name somewhere else and is not American. America does not have an illustrious history of international soccer. I know that might sound crazy to you, but they've had one non-American manager since 94. 95 is actually when the guy left. One since in the last 30 years. And it was a guy, by the way, who didn't do that bad a job. I'm not going to sit here and say Jurgen Klinsmann was the guy that was going to lead you to the World Cup title, right? Like, I'm not going to say that. But it's now all of a sudden this revisionist history of Jurgen Klinsmann came down here and pissed all the way down his leg and set U.S. soccer back decades. That's not the case. But the search committee, the last couple of times, have certainly thought that's the case because they will not look outside these 50 states. They might tell you they've tried to. They did not. And your like cookie cutter, sensible American choice is coaching Canada because you stuck with Gregg Berhalter. Jesse Marsch was the only one that would have fit into these guidelines that we've seen the last 10, 20 years that make sense for the U.S. and actually would have been a name, is a name in European and international soccer. He was the only one. But you decided to stick with Gregg instead. And now he's going to go up and coach Canada in the World Cup. We're stuck with a guy who can't even spell Gregg right. This is the time for the U.S. to actually make a splash. And I don't think it's as crazy as some people might think to go after a Jurgen Klopp, a Pep Guardiola, luring away a Jose Mourinho, an actual big-time name. I'll even take Rafa Benitez at this point. But something tells me they're just not going to do that. You have got one of the best 3 or 4 managers in the world sitting on his couch after just leaving Liverpool. You have probably the best manager in the world who really likes the U.S., vacations here a lot, has an affinity for the Boston Celtics apparently, and is always looking for a challenge, who is probably at the end of his time at Manchester City because he's accomplished literally everything you can accomplish there. Throw him 10 million, 15 million, 20 million. I don't care. Multiply Gregg's salary by 10. Take it out of Social Security. Take it out of my taxes. But find a way to get these guys through the door. There is no reason the USA is too small a job for these guys. There's no reason. They've got a great young core who's about to hit their prime. And maybe it's, maybe it's not as great as the clubs might indicate, but it is a really strong core. They should be running CONCACAF. And they should be with a seat at the table for the very best in the Copa America tournament. Are they Argentina or Brazil? Not quite, but they're right up there in terms of what they have in the starting 11. And instead, I've got a team that needs to match Panama's result in the last group stage game. And I've got a manager who is score watching with 25 minutes left, telling his team what the Panama score is and giving up the game-winning goal 30 seconds later. That was the US in 1990. That can't be the US now. It just we are supposed to be past that. And instead we're not. And we're talking about we're going on a decade of talking about Jurgen Klinsmann as the boogeyman. A guy who did just as well as Gregg Berhalter did in the World Cup, but did it in a much tougher group, the actual group of death, you know, sent Portugal home because they were advancing in the group of death, a group that included the world champions that year. Won a Gold Cup with him, first ever win in Italy under Jurgen Klinsmann, and I've got a guy now who can't beat a top 20 team that isn't Mexico. Oh, by the way, first win at the Stadio Azteca, Jurgen Klinsmann. But too bad he left Landon Donovan off the World Cup roster, and he played guys out of position, as if Gregg doesn't do the same thing. It's just so frustrating. Again, I'm not trying to say Klinsmann is the savior and we need him back, but to act like he ruined this federation of US soccer is total bullshit, man. And I'm not going to lie to you, the conversation feels a lot like the ones we were having with Trinidad and Tobago 7 years ago. Of why can't we figure this out? We've got more money in it than ever before. We're supposed to have better coaching than we've ever had before. We've got the players coming up, and the players now are better than they were in 2017. This is a better group. And we're still talking about the same crap. We limped into the World Cup last time, advanced past the group. Congratulations. Much easier group than you had in 2014. But fine. You played who was ahead of you, and you advanced past the group. And now we're talking about the same crap. Because honestly, the way we've been building it up for 8 years or so now, a loss in the round of 16 on home soil at the next World Cup might be a disappointment. But the reality with this leadership group is that might be an overachievement at this point. But that's not where we need to be. With all I've been hearing about with the investment and the academies and the time and the effort that are put in to the USMNT and its development program, way more bonkers than it's ever been. Then why can't we attract a real fucking manager? Because this sucks, and we are really teetering on another embarrassment on home soil. Because you've already checked one off. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Maybe I was naive in this, and certainly looks like I was naive in this. When they stuck with Gregg last year, I said, man, this must mean that this is going to be a hell of a Copa America run. We knew we were hosting by then. If they have exhausted this search, they've got a new guy at the top who has exhausted this search, and they're still sticking with Gregg Berhalter, there must be something going on behind the scenes that we're not seeing that will now be corrected. Because, and is it a player issue? I guess to some degree. I mean, and by that, I mean, Tim Weah gets a red card in this big international tournament as your striker, and gets a suspension because of it. Yeah, that might have helped to have your striker in there in a 1-0 game that you needed to equal a draw from Panama. Would have helped. But again, I look at the 11 that went out against Uruguay, and I'm saying this is the team that's an all-time failure. This is the one that is the first team ever to not make it past the group while hosting the Copa America with Turner and Richards and Ream and Robinson, Adams, McKinney, and Musa in the middle, Rayner and Pulisic on the wings. That's the problem. I don't think so. And the U.S. has lacked structure and style for a long time now. And And honestly, if you want to go with any kind of style that's Gregg Berhalter, it is defending to a fault, defending to a point where you can't counterattack or sustain any kind of attack. Because I mean, that's what we've seen. That's what we saw in the World Cup. That's what we saw against Wales. That's what we saw against England, and that's what we saw in the group stages again. A team that can't attack against Panama, brother. Give me a break, or better yet, give me Jurgen Klopp. Talk about a style. He's got a style. And he left Liverpool because he was burnt out. Guess what, Jurgen? How about I give you this deal? Managing a national team, way easier, brother. Way easier than managing Liverpool and the Premier League and the insane 12-month-a-year job that is. I'll give you a much easier time here in Chicago managing the USMNT. Pep, you want another challenge? You know, Man City was still in the oil money, sure, but they hadn't won 3 Premier Leagues in a row, let alone 4, let alone the Champions League. You did all that. I'll give you a challenge. Make it past the round of 16 with the U.S. men's national team. You want to prove that you're all that it's not just the oil money? Come over here, brother. Bring the tiki-taka or whatever you're calling it now. Jose, you want to park the bus and have no one bitch about the way that you're getting results, just that you're getting results? We'll take it. We'll take any results. I'll take Claudio Ranieri at this point. Basically the corpse of Claudio Ranieri. This is just, it is a dire time for U.S. men's soccer. And I know the athletes are only going to get better. And again, soccer is as great as it's ever been in this country. But we've been talking about this sport of the future thing for 30 fucking years since we hosted the World Cup. And if you flop at this World Cup again, guess what? It's going to be the sport of the future forever. That's what we're thinking about here. And it starts with such an easy move. And that's getting rid of Gregg. I know the timeline for these other guys are not great. You would have to take Mourinho out of the dugout. You'd have to take Pep out of the dugout, which wouldn't be till next year, which is a year before the World Cup. So of those 3, Klopp seems the most feasible because he's on the couch right now. But you've got to put a real plan together. And not just asking Bruce Arena who he likes and just looking within the states here. Screw the MLS shit. Don't get someone from MLS. I'd even be okay. Don't get someone who's in the program right now. It's time to change it. Because we're about to head towards another national embarrassment if something doesn't change right now. God bless America.
We are Rogue Media Sports.